Clara Dawson had forgotten the sound of her own heartbeat, forgotten what it felt like to be seen, to be wanted, to be loved. Then a stranger rode into Red Creek with dust on his boots, a shadow in his eyes, and a quiet voice that shattered the loneliness she had carried for years. She wasn't looking for love. He wasn't looking for a home. But in a town where nothing ever changed, their meeting was the spark that set two tired hearts on a collision course with destiny. The late afternoon sun hung over the small frontier town of Red Creek, throwing long golden rays across the dust-packed streets. Wagon wheels creaked in the distance, horses snorted, and the scent of baked earth drifted like a tired sigh over the land. Life in Red Creek moved slow, steady, and predictable, just the way most folks liked it. But for Clara Dawson, it had moved too slow, too quietly, for far too many years. She had long since forgotten what it felt like to be held, or cherished, or even simply seen. People greeted her with nods and polite smiles, but nothing more. She lived above her small dress-mending shop, and quietness had become the only companion she trusted. Clara stood by her shop window, stitching the final buttons onto a baby's dress ordered by the Jenkins family. Her fingers moved with practiced grace, though her mind wandered far beyond the thread. She caught her reflection in the window, a woman in her mid-30s, soft-featured, brown-eyed, her dark hair tied in a loose braid. She did not look old, yet she felt older than time itself. Loneliness had a way of adding years where none belonged. Outside, dust swirled. A rider approached, a tall man on a chestnut horse, his hat low over his eyes, shoulders set with the kind of tension that came from long rides and longer memories. Clara watched as he guided his horse toward the stable across from her shop. Something in his posture made her pause. Travelers came and went often, cowboys, ranch hands, drifters, but this man moved like someone carrying an invisible burden. He dismounted, patting the horse's neck gently. Then he turned, and for a moment their eyes met across the street. A flicker of curiosity passed through his gaze, followed by a small nod before he headed into the stable. Clara's breath caught unexpectedly. She couldn't recall the last time a stranger's eyes had lingered on her that way, not with interest, not with recognition, but with something else she couldn't name. That night, as Clara locked her shop door and climbed the wooden stairs to her living quarters above, the stranger's gaze stayed in her thoughts. She chided herself for noticing. Why should she care? Men like him passed through, stayed a night, then rode off to other towns with other stories, yet her pulse had quickened in a way she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Clara opened her shop early. She swept the wooden floor, tidied the fabrics, sorted her threads by shade, and checked her customer orders. She worked with the same quiet dedication she always had, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She wondered if the stranger was still in town. She wondered why she even wondered. Around midday, the bell above her shop door chimed. Clara looked up and froze. It was him. He stepped inside with a polite nod, removing his hat. His hair was dark, slightly tousled, and his eyes were a deep, clear green that seemed to hold more stories than any man could tell in one lifetime. "Morning, ma'am," he said softly. His voice carried a calm roughness, like gravel softened by river water. "I'm sorry to trouble you. The stable boy said this is the place to come if somebody needs something fixed." Clara swallowed. "Depends on what needs fixing." He hesitated before producing a torn leather glove from his coat pocket. The stitching along the palm had come undone completely. "I know it's leather, not cloth," he said quietly, "but folks say you've got the steadiest hands in town. Thought maybe you could take a look." Clara felt a faint warmth rise in her chest at the compliment. She took the glove gently, examining the tear. "I can fix it," she said, "but it'll take a little time, maybe an hour." He nodded. "I can wait." Clara guided him toward a small seating bench near the window, then took her place behind her work table. The needle pierced through the worn leather, pulling the thread tight. Her hands moved carefully, and she could feel his eyes drift toward her occasionally. It made her both nervous and strangely alive. "Name S. Luke Carver," he said after a moment. She kept her gaze on the glove. "Clara Dawson." "Nice town you've got here," Luke said, glancing out the window. "Seems peaceful." "It is," Clara replied, "sometimes too peaceful." Luke chuckled softly. "Peaceful can be good. A lot of places I've been lately don't have much of it left." Clara looked up. For the first time, she noticed the tiredness beneath his calm exterior, something deeper than simply road weariness. "You've been traveling long?" she asked. "Years," he replied simply, "looking for work, or maybe running from it. Hard to say these days." Something in the way he said it made Clara's heart tighten slightly. She finished the stitching, tied off the thread, and handed the glove back to him. He slipped it on, flexing his fingers. "Feels like new," he said, sincerely impressed. "Thank you." Clara found herself smiling, a real smile, not the polite one she gave customers. "You're welcome." Luke placed a few coins on the counter, though more than she would normally charge. "That's too much," Clara objected. "Not for the work you did," he insisted gently. "Keep it." She hesitated, then nodded. He made his way to the door, pausing before stepping outside. "Maybe I'll see you around town," he said. Clara's breath caught. Maybe. When the door closed, she let out a soft, shaky exhale. She felt changed in some small but undeniable way, as though a crack had formed in the wall she had long built around herself. The following days passed with slow anticipation she did not want to admit to. Luke stayed in Red Creek, helping at the stable in exchange for room and meals. He became a quiet presence around town, steady, reliable, kind to people and animals alike. Folks liked him quickly, including the children who gathered around him as he repaired wagons or fed the horses. Clara tried not to look for him. She tried not to notice whenever he passed near her shop. She tried not to feel the warmth in her chest whenever he offered her a nod or a brief smile. But she couldn't help it. And each time, she saw something in his eyes that felt like acknowledgement of her, not just as a shopkeeper, but as a woman someone might want to see. One warm evening, as the sun dipped behind the western hills, Clara walked toward the town well with an empty bucket. The wooden boards beneath her feet glowed amber, and a gentle breeze stirred her braid. Luke stood by the well, filling a pail for the stable. He looked up when he heard her steps. "Evening, Clara." "Evening," she replied, attempting calmness. "You working late?" "Seems so. Old Miller asked me to get some water before the horses settle." Clara lowered her bucket, but Luke reached for it. "I got this," he said gently. "You shouldn't have to carry heavy things this late." She blinked, startled. "I'm used to it." "Doesn't mean you should be," he replied. He filled her bucket, then set it beside her. Clara murmured, "Thank you." Luke studied her for a moment, his gaze softening. "Clara," he said quietly, "you always seem like you're carrying more weight than what's in that bucket." She stiffened, unsure whether to step back or step closer. His words reached deep parts of her she hadn't touched in years. "I'm fine," she said too quickly. Luke exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry, didn't mean to overstep." "No," Clara said softly, "you didn't. I'm not used to someone noticing." Their eyes met under the fading sunlight. Luke lowered his head just a little, his voice even gentler. "I notice." Clara felt her heart tremble. She turned slightly, afraid of how fragile she suddenly felt, but Luke didn't push. Instead, he waited, quiet, patient, understanding in a way no one had been with her in years. "You don't have to be alone, you know," Luke whispered. Clara's voice shook. "It's not about wanting to be, it's about not knowing how to be anything else anymore." Luke swallowed. "Please take it easy, I have not been loved years either." Her breath caught, something cracked open inside her, fragile but hopeful. She lifted her eyes to him, searching. "Then maybe," she whispered, "we can remember together." Luke reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. His hand touched hers lightly at first, then held it gently but firmly, as though promising he wouldn't let go unless she asked him to. "Clara," he murmured, "I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know I'd like to spend it with you." Her throat tightened, but not from sadness, from something tender, warm and blooming, something that felt like a beginning. The next weeks brought subtle changes. Neither spoke aloud, but both felt deeply. Luke visited her shop more often, sometimes under the excuse of needing something mended, other times simply to bring her fresh peaches from the market or to walk her home after closing. Clara found herself laughing more, smiling more, feeling lighter. One evening, they walked by the river that ran behind Red Creek. The sky was painted with orange and violet hues, and the air was cool and gentle. "Luke," Clara said quietly as they reached the water's edge. "Why did you really come to Red Creek?" He hesitated before answering. "I was lost," he said simply, not in the physical sense, just wandering, trying to find a place where the past didn't follow so loudly. "And have you found it?" she asked. Luke looked at her, and she felt the gravity of his gaze. "I think I found something better," he murmured. Clara flushed, heat rising to her cheeks. She looked down at the river's ripples, unsure how to hold such a confession in her hands. "Clara," he said softly, touching her chin, coaxing her to meet his eyes. "You make me feel like there's a future where I'm not alone." Her voice trembled. "You make me feel seen." Luke's thumb brushed her cheek gently. He bent his head slightly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, but she didn't. Their lips met, softly at first, then deeper, filled with years of longing and unspoken ache. Clara's heart swelled, fragile yet fierce, and Luke's arms wrapped around her carefully, as though she was something precious. When they parted, she leaned her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Luke held her like she was something he wanted to protect, not out of pity, but out of devotion. From that night on, they were no longer two lonely souls passing through life. They became companions, slowly, tenderly, cautiously building trust. Luke helped Clara around the shop. She taught him finer stitching when he admitted he wanted to fix his own gear. He found comfort in her quiet presence, and she found strength in his gentle steadiness. Their bond deepened not through dramatic declarations, but through small acts of kindness, the way Luke would light the lanterns before she arrived in the morning, the way Clara would pack an extra sandwich for him when he had long days at the stable. They talked often, sharing pieces of their pasts, and healing became a shared journey. But one late autumn morning, word reached town that a dangerous outlaw gang had been spotted near the outskirts. Fear rippled through Red Creek. People shuttered windows, locked doors, whispered at doorsteps. Luke stood on alert, watching the roads. He had seen trouble before. He knew the signs. Clara sensed a change in him, a tension, a quiet calculation. "You're worried," she said gently as they closed her shop one evening. Luke nodded. "Those men aren't just passing through. If they come here, people could get hurt." "Luke," Clara whispered, "don't do anything reckless." He took her hands. "I won't, I promise, but I won't let anything happen to this town, to you." Fear fluttered in her chest. "Don't talk like that." Luke pulled her into his arms. "Clara, you're the first person who made me want to stay somewhere. I won't risk losing you." "Please," she whispered against his shirt, "please take it easy." He kissed the top of her head gently. "I will." 2 days later, the outlaws approached town, but thanks to Luke's warnings, the sheriff and townsfolk were ready. A tense standoff followed, but the gang realized Red Creek wasn't the easy target they expected. After a brief confrontation, they retreated. No shots fired, no injuries. When word reached Clara that Luke had helped coordinate the town's defense, relief washed through her so intensely she nearly collapsed. That evening, Luke came to her shop, dusty and tired, but unharmed. Clara ran to him, tears in her eyes. "You're safe," she breathed, touching his face. "I'm here," Luke whispered, pulling her close. "I told you I'd take it easy." She laughed through her tears. "You scared me." He smiled softly. "I'm sorry." That night they walked home hand in hand. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. Red Creek felt peaceful again. Luke paused outside her shop door, studying her tenderly. "Clara," he said, "I've wandered for too many years. I think I've finally found where I belong." Her heart thudded. "Where is that?" He touched her cheek. "With you." Her breath caught. "I want you to stay." Luke smiled, a rare, open smile filled with warmth. "Then I will." Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Luke found permanent work at the stable. Clara's shop grew with his help, the shelves newly organized, the front porch repaired, the sign freshly painted. They shared dinners, laughter, quiet evenings by lamplight. Slowly, the years of loneliness folded behind them. One winter morning, snow dusted the rooftops, and Clara awoke to find Luke standing at the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in pale gold. "What are you thinking about?" she murmured sleepily. Luke turned, his breath visible in the chilly air. "How lucky a man can be," he said softly. "How lucky I am." Clara approached him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I never thought someone would come into my life like you," she whispered. Luke kissed her gently. "Clara, I want to give you the love you've been denied for so long." Her eyes filled with emotion. "And I want to give you the same." Luke reached into his pocket, retrieving a small leather pouch. Clara gasped softly as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring. "I don't have much," he said quietly. "No fancy words, no big promises, but I can promise this: I'll stand by you, I'll care for you, I'll love you with every piece of my heart. Clara Dawson, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. She cupped his face in her hands. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Luke, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, then kissed her, holding her as though she was the most cherished person in the world. Clara felt it then, fully and deeply, the love she thought she'd never have, the warmth she thought she'd never feel again. Luke held her securely, protectively, tenderly. It was the kind of embrace that erased every lonely night she had ever endured. And as the snow continued to fall softly outside, settling over Red Creek like a blanket of peace, Clara knew she had finally found what she had waited years for. A home, a partner, a love that took its time but arrived exactly when she needed it most. And Luke Carver, who had wandered for so long, found the same in her. Together they stepped into the future, not perfect, not predictable, but shared, and that made all the difference. Because sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with fireworks, but with two weary hearts whispering softly, "Please take it easy, I have not been loved years." And then choosing to love, gently and fiercely, for the rest of their days.